Hello, and welcome to a special episode of the JavaScript Jabber podcast. Today I'm flying solo as a host, Dan Shapir, coming to you from Tel Aviv, but I've got plenty of guests. With me are Ariel Shulman, Liad Yosef, and Evyatar Alush, and together we're going to have this really interesting discussion, I think, about public speaking, speaking at conferences, speaking at any venue where you can talk about tech, what we think about it, how you should go about it, the upsides, the downsides, tips and suggestions and whatnot. I think it's going to be a great conversation. But first, I'll let you introduce yourselves. So, ladies first, Ariel, please go.
Liad, please go. Um, I'm Ariel. Sorry, he's my friend. I'm allowed. I'm Ariel. I'm a full stack developer at Ilmex. I did my first conference 3 years ago. Very passionate about it, and have a few upcoming conferences also this year. Sorry, not this week. And I think that's it. Also coming live from Tel Aviv.
Yeah, Tel Aviv is the place to be. Today we are all Israelis on this podcast, so I hope it works well. Anyway, Liad, how about you yourself? You've given some of the best talks I've heard. I have to say, I've listened to you, for example, at the Reversim conference. You always give these amazing talks. So please describe yourself as in general and as a public speaker.
Yeah, so first of all, yeah, thank you. I'm Liad. I'm currently a principal engineer in Shopify. I've been in companies like Duda. I've been a consultant to many companies, and one of my passions is public speaking, and specifically tech public speaking. I think I gave my first talk at a conference about 6 years ago, and it started. I gave talks in meetups before that, and ever since I'm trying to give really entertaining talks at conferences. So we'll probably dive into that later. And yeah, other than that, I'm also coming live from Tel Aviv right now. And again, public speaking is one of my hobbies, so I'm looking forward to talk with you.
Any upcoming talk conferences that you're scheduled to speak at?
There are a few. Actually, this year I'm in the content committee of a lot of conferences, and there are also a few meetups and private company lectures that I'm giving in the coming months.
We
yeah,
don't count those.
yeah.
Okay, cool. And Evyatar, how about you?
I'm Evyatar. I'm a software engineer at Meta for the past 5 years or so, a little bit more. And also a public speaker, been speaking in conferences on and off for the past 6 years, almost 6 years. First conference was in 2019. You mentioned Reversim conference, so that was the first one I spoke at Reversim 2019. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And I also have a few upcoming this year as well.
That's nice. So also I'll introduce myself as a speaker. I'm older than all of you, so I've been speaking for longer.
Together.
Yeah. No,
I'm just kidding.
not quite that old, I don't think. I think I spoke at a conference for the first time approximately 20 years ago, probably before Ariel was born. Um,
I was starting elementary school.
I'm currently principal engineer at SciSense. I also really enjoy public speaking. This year, I've got 3 upcoming talks. I'll be speaking at JS Heroes in Romania in about a month, and I'm also speaking at React Next and at NoTLV, 2 conferences here in Tel Aviv. And I've got some submitted CFPs, so keeping my finger crossed for some additional talks. We will see. Um, Anyway, so now that we've all introduced ourselves and we can start talking about, conference speaking specifically, I think the first question that I want to pose to you, and feel free to answer in whatever order, is why? Why is it that you want to speak at conferences, that you submit to conference, go through the whole challenge of coming up with a talk. What's the upside? Why do you actually do it?
Who goes first?
I can go. I can go because it's pretty simple. Um, so before even becoming a public speaker, I mean, I wanted to be a public speaker for a long time, but one of the things that I enjoy doing is working on open source projects. I have a bunch of open source projects, and I always come up with more. And it's usually, I even spoke about one of those here on the podcast last year, I think. And every time while working on libraries and tools for other developers, I come up with challenges that are non-trivial, things that the everyday developers don't always face because they're lower level or they come from a different paradigm from a product developer. Because I build tools and not products, and sometimes I need to find special solutions, ingenious solutions, and sometimes even break the rules. And what I like doing is take the audience with me on a journey of like a detective story, solving the same problem that I did, and seeing them experience the same development and learning journey that I went through is some of the most empowering things that I enjoy doing as a public speaker.
So I'm going to take take AJ's role a little bit, in the sense that I'm going to push back a little bit on what you just said, because what you described, to an extent, you kind of corrected at the end, but to an extent you described the value that your audience gets from your talk. But I'm actually asking a different question. I'm asking about the value that you derive from giving the talk. What is it about public speaking? You do it, at the end of the day, we do it for us. I mean, we obviously like to share. We want to see the industry move forward. If we can help people, that's great. But, we let's be honest, we do it for us. So what is it about the giving public talks that is enjoyable to you?
Of course, I do it for the travel and accommodation. Um, and no, more seriously, it is something that, of course, I do talk about my open source projects mostly to gain attraction to those projects, to gain visibility to the projects. But I also like to educate the audience about new ways of solving issues. It's not just for them, it's for me. It's to get some sort of validation that the things that I do and the things that I come up with actually work and are interesting and are valuable to other people other than just me. So it is kind of both.
Cool. So in a sense, it's like the value that you derive from doing those open source projects, in a sense that you like
Hmm.
to share, basically.
Yes.
Cool. How about you, Liad? What's in it for you?
So I actually really like that this is the first question because that's like I think the hardest one. But
Okay.
I really like giving talks not just on tech, even since I was in high school, like standing in front of an audience and speaking about something. That's also something that I did in the military a little bit, and I think that I noticed that I really enjoy seeing this aha moment in the eyes of the audience when I try to tell them about things that are new to them or things that I did that all of a sudden they look at it in a different way. And those are the exact moments that I'm looking for, whether I'm speaking in a room of 50 people or 2,000 people. So I think that's like the high that I'm getting from
Mm.
standing and
Yeah,
giving
it is
talks.
a rush. I
Yeah,
agree.
and so that's one thing. That's what's in it for me. And I think I used to refrain from even submitting to conferences for a long time. And then I heard this kind of someone like a saying that someone told me, because I thought I had nothing interesting to say because everybody knows everything. But then someone told me, I can bet that you did in the past year, you did at least 5 things that no one else did. Like no one that you
Y-
can talk about, no one else did.
You're
And
jumping the gun on a future question of mine. So let's
Okay.
put that aside for a minute. I mostly want to so I want to concentrate less on what it is that you decide to talk about or the
Mm-hmm.
topics you bring to the table. I'm again focusing in this question on the value that we derive from public speaking.
Yeah, so I'll end up by saying that obviously there's the value of putting myself out there and making myself a little bit of content. It's not content expert, but someone who speaks about React, who speaks about those kinds of things. And like Evyatar said, when you build a talk, you have to really dive into things, right? To explain it to someone in 30 minutes, you have to know it very deeply. So that's part of the value that I derive from it, of understanding the topic really well, and also being the person that understands the topic really well, so they can talk about it. So
Oh,
if
I
it,
totally agree with you.
yeah.
It's I get the same value from talks, also from this podcast, by the way,
Mhm.
that when you need to speak intelligently
Yeah.
about a topic, it requires you to learn it, to understand it, to actually be able to articulate it, means that you have to internalize it first. So it's a great way of learning new topics. But you also brought up a certain point. In the past, we actually had this great episode on the show with Morad Stern from Wix
Mhm.
about building your personal technological brand. And you mentioned that. But I do have to ask about this. Do you feel that your public speaking has actually promoted your brand in a sense which furthered your career, let's say?
um, yeah, I can answer for myself that definitely. I feel like my career, you can split the career into two: before I started public speaking and after. You can't compete with this kind of reach. You can't compete with an audience of people who sits and listen to you, and you have the chance, you have the opportunity to present yourself as an expert, as a domain expert, or as someone who can speak intelligently, like you say. So definitely, it has a huge impact on the brand. I think it's the highest value for effort that you can get,
So
brand wise, personal brand
you're
wise.
at a very senior role, principal engineer at a
Mm-hmm.
very well-known company, Shopify.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that your public speaking was had a significant impact on your ability to get this position?
Um, Yeah, definitely. I can't count the number of messages that I got. Hey, I saw your video in this conference, or I saw you in this conference, or someone from my company told me about this talk that you gave. And when you like a lot of messages come with links to YouTube of my talk. So I think I wouldn't say that I wouldn't get to this point otherwise, but definitely it helped a lot. It helped a lot. Put you out there, to get your name to be known. That's something that you can't really do in any other way.
How about you, Ariel?
I think they stole all of my arguments. Like
That's why I
because
volunteered to
for
be
me, it's
first.
and it was both of you that stole it. It's absolutely, like Liad said. It's a and also what Evyatar said. It, for me, the value, like the crowd's benefit and my benefit are strictly equal. Like when I see people's aha moment, like that fills me. So I am dependent on, like, their experience is my experience, and also the rush of seeing, like, 1,000 people focused completely, like only on every word that you say. It's an incredible feeling that's very hard to describe, and also the amount of opportunities that came out of this is unbelievable. I will say that I also I was interviewed recently about, like, public speaking and branding, and I think that specifically when you talk about branding, when people do public speaking, not in the purpose of creating a brand, but in the purpose of delivering and giving other people value, the brand kind of builds itself. And it's really easy to differentiate between speakers that the best speakers are not in it for the branding. The branding built itself because they're passionate, and I can see a lot of like people pushing themselves towards public speaking for the sake of branding, and it just doesn't create the same content because it's quite obvious, right? When you're creating content, are you thinking about your brand, or are you thinking about how does my crowd benefit from this to the maximum? And it really creates a completely different experience, if you ask me.
I
I,
do want to add one point. Evyatar, you kind of joked about the travel and accommodation, but for me, it's actually not so much of a joke. Almost every time I go to a conference overseas, I try to turn it into a trip, a vacation, a tour. So, for example, about 2 years ago, I spoke at Web Directions in Sydney, Australia, and I brought my wife along, and we toured for a month in Australia after this conference. Now, obviously, we don't need the conference in order to do that, but it's really nice when somebody pays for half your plane tickets. And that's a fairly significant factor for me of basically just visiting places that I might not have gone to otherwise, if not for that for those conferences.
Although if you weren't that passionate about JavaScript, I don't know if you would have made it all the
Oh
way to
yeah, for
Sydney.
sure.
yeah.
But it's like they say about real programmers that we are always surprised at how much we earn doing something we would have done for free.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of the same about the conference scene. I probably would have done it otherwise, but it's a great benefit.
I,
I
I,
will say,
mhm.
just, and I'll give you I'll let you speak in a second, Liad. I will say that if a conference does not cover my expenses and it's not a conference that my job decides to send me to, then I'm highly unlikely to go there.
Um, yeah, so you spoke about the accommodation and the flight, and that raises another point, another benefit of speaking conferences, especially high profile conferences, is the other speakers. So you have a lot of opportunities to connect with people that are legends in the field, and you sit with them to a speakers dinner, and you talk to them, and you create connections, and that's something that um, it's a personal benefit. It's not why we do the conferences, but that's something that helps build your brand and build your connections. And coming as a speaker, obviously, it puts you in a different category than just coming to
Oh,
the conference.
I'm actually a host here on this podcast because of that, because I was speaking at O'Reilly Fluent when that conference still existed, a few years ago in the States, like 6 years ago. It's not so few anymore, 6 or 7. And I met Amy Knight, who was one of the hosts at JavaScript Jabber back then. And she basically kind of invited me on the show, and things got rolling, and eventually I became a host. So for sure, I met Kenzie Dodds, I
Mhm.
met Kyle Simpson, I met Tejas. The list goes on and on. Some people off the top of my head, but uh, the speakers' dinners tend to be awesome. And also, I like to say that probably that in many conferences, the most interesting place in the conference is
Is the
the speakers room.
speakers room. Yep.
Yeah, if even if you're not speaking, I recommend sneaking into the speakers room. Yeah,
Yeah.
there
Uh,
usually isn't a guard at the door. You can basically just get in if you've got the chutzpah.
Don't tell all the secrets though.
yeah, by the way, about the personal brand that you ask, I remember that I think only after my third or fourth talk ever, I think it was Gil Tayar that came to me and say, "Hey, maybe you'd want to put your details, like your contact details, at the end of the talk, just so people will know, who you are." And I was so focused on giving the value that I didn't think about it. But that's something that if you want to use conferences to increase your personal brand, you have to do that, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
so Gil I actually met at Wix, but he's
Mhm.
one of the great people you can meet at conferences. Another one was Rich Harris. I met him at a conference. A lot of amazing people. Ryan Carniato. The list goes on and on and on. I even remember a funny story, like way back when I was at Google I/O, and I wasn't even speaking there. I was just, visiting and walking around, and I met Jason Miller, the creator of Preact, and I forget his name, the guy who created Webpack. Um,
Sokra.
I forget. Anyway, so we were sitting together and then we were walking around together, just talking about stuff. And then I see this guy walking towards us, and there's this look of recognition in his eyes, and he walks up to us all excited. And I'm wondering, who will he speak to? The creator of Preact to my right, or the creator of Webpack to my left? And he goes to me and he says, Dan, I saw your talk at this and that conference. It was so great. And I was like, yes. So it does create a certain brand recognition, and it's a great feeling when that happens. Anyway, moving on to the next question that I prepared. So we talked about our background as speakers, about why we got into public speaking, but after talking about the why, let's talk about the how. How did you actually get into public speaking? What was the process for you? Who wants to go first this time?
Meet this time.
Go for it.
As a matter of fact, I was really outside of the whole wouldn't say the industry, but like I wasn't really in this world of conferences, and I was barely going to any meetups. So I had no idea what of a brand it could create and which opportunities is it going to give me. Like I changed jobs after I worked in Tysense, and in my new job, I wasn't in a team full of senior developers, and I suddenly saw that I have value to give other developers,
You were the
because I
senior.
yes, and suddenly I saw that I have a lot of things I can teach others, and I wanted more. I wanted more than just the five developers I was working with, and I was looking for a connection to speak in a meetup, and I went to Reverse Sim conference. I started mingling and caught some guy that connect Gilad. You guys know him, and he connected me with some community to speak in a meetup. I gave a talk about Git, actually, how Git works, and it just blew up. It was really quite insane. Like after that talk, I had so many different industries approaching me. I gave that talk like probably everywhere in the military. And then the conferences approached me to come to file a CFP, and it really just got so crazy so fast without any intention of. I had no idea what's in it for me, like what we talked about earlier. I just wanted to teach people stuff, and I was like, I can talk about Git. I think it's beautiful, and one thing led to another, and now I'm flying for 4 conferences in a year.
Each one has their own concept of beauty.
You don't think Git is
No,
beautiful?
I think Kit is beautiful on the inside. I think the command
Yes.
line interface leaves a lot to be desired.
If you would listen to my talk, I don't recommend that much using the command line. I just recommend understanding how it works, and then you can use the beautiful GUI interfaces.
Point taken. Evyatar, how about you? How did you get into actually public speaking?
Funny story. No. So
We
the
like
first
funny
one,
stories.
like I initially wanted to become a public speaker like years before. I remember going to a conference in 2015, and I think it was the first You Got a Love Fronted in
Mhm.
2015, and I saw I think it was Douglas Crawford and on the stage, and I was odd because for the first time that I go to a conference, I see it wasn't about him, but it was about him being actually being valued enough to be flown all the way to another country and actually delivering value to an audience. and already at that point I was like, I want to be there, I want to be on that stage, be able to deliver value and valued enough, so that I can be sent or invited to such conferences. And I had no idea what that means, being invited to a conference. And in 2019 came my first option, or my first opportunity, where my company pretty much promoted and advocated for engineers to apply for the Reverse Team conference, which was a local conference. So it was pretty easy. The process was pretty easy to follow up, and there was a voting process. And I got in and gave a lightning talk, a 15-minute lightning talk about one of my open source projects. But then a year after, COVID hit, and I was like, how do I go to conferences now? How do I join conferences now? How do I apply? I didn't even work at the same place. Nobody advocated for it, and I didn't really still know any speakers or anybody, and I didn't know which door should I knock. What is the secret code for actually applying to conferences? How do I get invited? And it was like a very weird process of trial and error, and actually understanding there's no secret code, there is no speakeasy bar. It's just a simple CFP, call for papers form, that you need to file and come up with an interesting enough idea. And I filed enough of those that I started getting accepted to, back it was 2020, so online conferences, because everything was online in 2020. And suddenly that opened the door to real life conferences, first in Poland and then in Germany, and another one in Germany, and like a bunch of those worldwide years after.
Yeah, it's the COVID period was tough,
Oh
undoubtedly.
yeah.
For you guys.
Why wasn't it tough for you?
I was surfing in Australia.
Oh, well, okay. That yeah. I
That
can
sucks
dig
for
it.
you.
Yeah, I can dig it. I can envy you. That's fine. Um, yeah, it's interesting because my reaction to COVID was actually a bit of the opposite of yours. I've been speaking for a while before COVID, and when COVID hit, initially I also registered for a couple of online conferences just to keep the ball rolling. The assumption was, we'll probably get out of this mess in about 6 months or so. So I did a couple of those, and my overall experience with them was terrible. It felt like I was talking to a wall. And I basically just gave up on those. So for the most of the duration of COVID, I did not speak at conferences at all, and only got back to it after COVID hit, after COVID ended, and then the war happened, and the last couple of years have not been easy.
Mm.
Anyway,
No,
let's.
I completely agree, but I saw that as a ladder for me, because that was the beginning of my career as a speaker. Today, I
Mm,
completely agree with your perception of online conferences. Many people like them, but maybe as an audience, as a speaker, you don't get audience engagement, and you don't even know if you come through to the audience.
yeah, that's true. How about you, Liad? How did you get into the game?
Yeah, so I've been giving internal talks in Duda because I was leading the front end. So I did a lot of like small talks like Ariel in Duda, and there was, I think it was early 2019, like January 2019, where they came to me and say, Duda came to me and say, hey, we're going to host a meetup of a group called React Israel. Do you want to give a talk there about like the React migration that we did? And I said, okay. And I took, I think, a whole week. I built this talk like a whole week, full time, monitoring, because it was my first talk in a meetup, and I gave it, and it got really good results. And actually, my experience was the opposite of Evyatar's. By I didn't submit anything, but right after the meetup, Adam Klein, from one of the organizers of React Next, he took me aside and say, "Hey, do you want to speak at React Next? Do you want to give some sort of a talk at React Next?" Yeah, of course. And then I gave a talk at React Next. It was in Hall B, which is a smaller one, and I prepared for it a lot. So I was a little bit disappointed, but it was crowded. It was full room. And it also got, I think it got like the best talk in the conference or something like that. And that really opened the door for conference in Israel. Um, and as for the conference abroad, so actually the COVID times were really helpful for me, like Evyatar said, because it was online conferences. And because it was online, there were a lot of tracks, so a lot of talks could be accepted. So it was really easy to start building your name and reputation in those online conferences. I gave, I think, 6 or 7 different talks during the half year of the COVID. I recorded one of them from Greece. So we were in a house in Greece, and I sat with the laptop and I recorded them because I had to submit them. And afterwards, it opened the door to like international conferences. I spoke in React Summit and JS Nation, all the big conferences, which yeah, and the rest is history. By the way, I have to say that before I started speaking in conferences, I went to a lot of conferences like Evyatar. I went to YGLF, You Got a Front in 2015. I think it was like the inflection point for a lot of us. And the talk that affected me the most, there were 2 of them. The first one was Gil Tayar's. So I looked at Gil's talk, and it was so out of this world. And I said, I want to be. I don't know how, but I want to be there on the stage one day. And the second one, it was the closing talk from I don't remember his name, someone from Smashing Magazine, who gave a talk that was 30 minutes, something like 900 slides, like ta 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 ta, and it was such a rush running through this talk. I really enjoyed it, even though I didn't understand like half of the thing. So I said, okay, I want to be this kind of people, this kind of person that stands on and.
You mean Vitaly Friedman?
Yeah, I think it was Vitaly Friedman.
Yeah, he's another guy I met at a couple of conferences. He's a great guy. We should probably have him on the show sometime.
Yeah, he's a great entertainer. I mean, that Gil and Vitaly was the like my epitome of how a good speaker should be. It should be informative and entertaining. So
yeah. So just to give my own background story, I was working at this small company, a startup, and we were playing in a field with a lot of larger companies. We were trying to get the message out, and I actually leveraged conferences initially basically as a means to promote our company and our technology. So it was not a sponsored. I was really careful not to do it like too markety. So I was talking about technologies and stuff like that, but I was still getting just the fact that I could say, and we're using this technology, or I could use our products as examples for useful stuff, and enabled me to get the word out. And then I started working at Wix. And one of the great things about Wix is that Wix really pushes its employees to speak at conferences, and even covers expenses and stuff like that. And I also got into web performance relatively early, and that became a really hot topic. So for a while there, it was fairly straightforward to get into conferences speaking about web performance. Anyway, moving on to the next question. Um, How do you find and select speaking opportunities? What are your selection criteria for deciding which conferences to try to speak at? Ariel, go first again.
Yeah, I'm thinking, do I want to get more competition or not?
You
Do
don't
you
need
want
to
the real
name.
answer?
You don't want. You don't need to name the conferences if you if you don't
No,
want
no,
to.
it's fine. It's fine. I was just kidding. There are enough conferences in enough areas that it's okay, and we always in all conferences, I think, welcome new
Sorry.
speakers as well. So it's completely fine. So first of all, there are many online repositories for conferences. So like a bunch of websites. There is a Trello board, an Airtable board. I just found a new one recently that just have the list of all upcoming conferences. And they usually also say if the conferences cover travel and accommodation, what it is about, what is the date. So these are very good utilities and tools and websites. Usually, you should just look up on Google CFP, and maybe we can later on the show notes add just a bunch of them.
I
So
think we should
that
add them on the show notes.
Yeah.
yeah,
Hard to
so
find them.
that we can so that the audience can find them. But also there
What do
is
you
a
think
very
of?
nice
By the way, before you go on, what do you think of Sessionize?
Sessionize. It's a good tool for actually applying, but I don't think it's a good discovery tool from conferences. I do not enjoy it for discoverability.
Hmm. probably need to get you to share some of your links with me.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
be on the show notes.
Mhm.
I think. But before that, they'll get to you. And also, there is a really cool initiative in the Israeli
Yeah,
community. That's a WhatsApp group for I don't know how many we are there already, but at least dozens of speakers from Israel that we actually share CFPs that are about to close soon, and there's even a website for that community where we voluntarily upload lists of CFPs that we find. So that's pretty cool.
for sure.
And
How
I think
about
we're
you,
all
Liad?
members of it also.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I recruited you for this conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
Liad, how about you?
Yeah, so in addition to those resources that Evyatar mentioned, I think at some point in your career, in your speaking career, where you have conferences that you either gave more than one token or you gave a really good token, you start to get inbound requests for for speaking. So, for example, the Git Nation conferences sometimes approach me and say, "Hey, we have React Summit next year. Do you want to speak?" Or the Geekel, which is like a network of a lot of online conferences. They usually they have a lot of inbound requests, and so so in addition to those kind of conferences, I I know people in the community that share with me, hey, we're going to speak, or we're applying to this and this conference, or there's this really interesting conference that's happening. So I think like building a network of speakers, that's also something that's really really important in order to
Building
yeah
networks is always a good thing.
yeah. Mhm.
Ariel, anything to add?
Take Evyatar's links. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I think
But
I got like maybe 4 conferences since I asked Evyatar for his resources.
Oh, I got the best links.
yeah,
He does.
links are us. But that's what you guys described is how you find conferences. But how do you choose conferences? I mean, I assume you don't submit to each and every conference. How do you choose which conferences to submit to?
um,
Why not submit and then refuse?
mm,
Like you can submit as many as you like. You can refuse. Like
Oh yeah,
I
for
I
sure.
honestly I don't. I would submit to anything that has travel and accommodations covered, and it's not a place that I wouldn't like to be at. And I it happened to me to decline to conferences. Like it's fine, it happens. I think it's better to have the opportunity to decline than not to have it at all.
I
Well, obviously, you occasionally need to decline, sometimes strictly for personal reasons, sometimes because you submit for to three conferences and they all
Yeah,
happen at more or less the same date, so you can't physically be
and
at
you
all
got
three,
in.
and you get into all three, and you don't know that in advance. So
Aviatar did that
I actually, but I did go to both.
because of
yeah
me.
you spoke at three conferences at the same time.
yeah.
True.
I went to two conferences like that were one day apart in two different countries in Europe. So yeah,
They even overlapped. They overlapped a day, and you got late to the
yeah.
other conference.
Uh,
I would
Even though I do know a speaker who flew from, it was Hilafish, who flew from Dublin to, who spoke at in a conference in Dublin, flew to Germany to give her talk and flew back to Dublin. Again, both conferences at the same day.
Wow. I would also
Yeah.
add a rule of thumb for me that it should be a conference that I can see myself coming as a guest. I mean, that's I think like the top tiers of conferences that I would apply to are conferences that I would want to be in, even not as a speaker. So that's
I forget, by the way, who it was. He's a well-known C++ speaker whose name escapes me right now. And he spoke at a conference that I also attended, and we went out for drinks afterward. And he's one of those people who, goes from conference to conference to conference. And I asked him about, did he have any stressful experiences? And he told me of this time he was supposed to give the closing keynote at the conference, and his flight was late. So he literally got to the conference 3 minutes before his talk, walked out of the taxi directly onto the stage and started speaking. So I asked them, "Were you really stressed out?" He said, "Kinda, but not as much as the conference organizers." So, so yes, conference organizing is pretty stressful job. Something I'm grateful that I've never done. Um, Okay. I agree with everything you said. And if there's one annoying thing, though, is that sometimes it's pretty difficult to figure out if a conference does or does not cover expenses. It should be upfront and straightforward, and sometimes it's not for some reason. And when it's not, it's kind of annoying. Um, Let me see. What's the next question I want to ask about? Oh, yeah, this is a good one. How do you come up with the topics to talk about? Before you start answering, when I really try to convince people that I work with, that I interact with in the tech community to speak at conferences. And one of the common responses that I hear is, I don't have anything to talk about. I have nothing interesting to tell. There's nothing that I'm currently doing that's interesting to anybody, and so forth. Obviously, that's not true. But there is still a question of how to come up with actual conference talk topics. So, how do you go about it? Liad, let's start with you this time. You're never first.
Ah. Yeah, so it's a really good question, and I think it changes throughout your career. So I would say that if it's an advice that I'm giving to people that they want to talk about something, is like the first topic that you're going to choose, that should be something that you're very fluent in. You're very fluent in, and it doesn't matter if you feel that you don't have any value to give. You have value to give. If that's something that you worked on, you have value to give, definitely. But I would say that my choice of topics now are combinations of either things that are of interest to me, even if it's not something that I do in my day job, but of interest to me, and I want to dive deep and I want to be able to speak about them. Or that's something that I think would go well with the theme of the conference and the zeitgeist of the times, right? So I wouldn't give a talk about React hooks today, even if
AI, give me more AI.
AI is so 2024. Yeah,
Yeah, now it's MCP, I think, which is still AI.
yeah, yeah.
And for some reason, I think you do know a little bit about MCP.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I I read some tweets about it. So I think it's definitely a mix, because it has to be something that you think would give value to the audience, but it has to be something that of interest to you. I wouldn't give a talk about something that I wouldn't want to listen to as an audience.
How about you, Ariel? You're never second.
Um,
Yeah.
I think this question is also maybe it's about phases in the career, but I also feel like there's style to it. Like there are each there are lecturers that have like a style. Like I can say that I know my style is to take deep concepts and to break them up to the smallest pieces, and like just to like I love explaining how things work. And it kind of goes also back to the beginning of this conversation of what's in it for me. Only until I break a subject deep, like I'm basically explaining it to myself. I'm building the ideal explanation for myself and sharing it. So I take technologies not that I do feel like, not technologies that I don't like, but I like to take technologies that are to take deep concepts and to research the f out of them, and and really I also feel like that kind of is what helps with the imposter syndrome for some people, that they think that they don't have something to talk about, or that they don't know enough. Research the f out of it until you know that you have value, because nobody has invested so much research in what you're going to talk about, and
In-
that's kind of what I try to do when I build talks about things. I think I invest dozens of hours of research.
Interestingly, I think my son once told me something along the lines of that if you've read a book about some topic, then you know more about that topic than 70 or 80% of the people in the world, even if you've read just one book about it. So yeah,
Interesting.
don't underestimate the knowledge that you gained by working on a particular topic as part of your day job
Yeah, but
or
also
or
if you
or as
want
a
to give
project.
value, you need research,
Yeah, for sure.
probably.
But at the very least, you know what to research.
True. Something.
Evyatar, how about you?
Yeah. So for me, it's pretty easy, I think, because I have my own niche that I only talk about things that I build. Um, so the topics are no, it's actually not that easy because what I like doing and my style of presentations is almost always live coding. So I love and what I enjoy doing is take a problem that I solved and break it down to the audience in a way that actually teaches them something. And the issue is, and the challenge is identifying the small enough but meaningful enough kind of problem for the audience to actually relate to, but also be able to deliver on stage in a 30-minute time frame. So what I do is usually when building a library or when building a tool is find the lower level parts of my libraries or the lower level solutions that I had to come up with that I can actually share with the audience and they will get some benefit from. So sometimes it's a component of my system, just a unit of my system that I try to build together with the audience and then create and also something that I had to solve, something that I needed to solve for myself, and then walk the audience through the journey that I went. So this is usually the type of talk that I choose, and this is the topic that comes to mind. And so it happens every time I continue building my tools and adding more capabilities, I find new challenges and new solutions for these challenges. So I come up with new talk ideas. And even though I have the same core five main open source projects that I work on, the talks never run out because I keep maintaining them and keep coming up with new challenges as the story continues with those packages.
Just a reminder to our audience that you were a guest on our show speaking about the VEST testing
Hmm.
framework or testing
Yeah,
library,
validation framework.
validation framework. Oh, for forms, not for testing. It
Yeah,
looks like a testing library, but it's a form validation library.
exactly.
Sorry for the confusion. Yeah, I totally align with that in the sense that I think it has to do with a way of thinking. Whenever somebody, like I said, tells me that I don't actually have a topic, in a lot of cases, I ask them, okay, tell me what you're currently working on. Tell me a problem that you had to solve in the context of your work. Obviously, you've had to solve some problems. Now I'll show you how you can take that topic and transform it into a conference talk. So it's a kind of a way of thinking of, like you said, you're working on a problem, you're solving a problem, and then it kind of clicks, hey, this can be a topic, a topic for a talk that I give at a conference. And for me, at least, in most cases, I I don't create talks for conferences. I don't know about you guys. It works in the reverse. I have a talk idea, I write it down, and then when conferences come along, I try to align the relevant ideas with the talk, with the conference based on what I perceive the theme of the conference to be. It's very rare for me to try to come up with a talk particularly or specifically for a conference just because I saw a CFP for that conference. I won't say it never happened because I think it did, at least in the beginning, but it's fairly rare for me to do that. So okay, you've got an idea. Maybe you've written down the title, you have some thoughts about what it is that you want to show, but now you need to actually turn it into a CFP. That means a title, that means an abstract, Sometimes there are additional fields that they require you to fill, like what's in it for the audience, how did you do go about the research, and what and so on and so forth. How do you go about that particular process?
You talk about finding a CFP for a talk that you've never
No,
given.
I'm talking about taking a new talk idea that appeared in your head and actually turning it into the content that you fill in the CFP form. Because
Because
writing
it's
and
not like a 2-point thing. You can do meetups. You can present it in a non-conference environment. There is a somewhere in
I'll put
between
it
the.
differently. You need to come up with a title. You need to come up with an abstract. You need to come up with maybe additional information about that conference talk proposal, and those need to be attractive. Because at the end of the day, you know, it's a blind selection in most cases, and a catchy title is better than a whole oh hum title, and likewise with regard to the abstract. So those do make a difference. So my question is, what's your process for turning the idea into a title and an abstract?
Fir- Um, first of all, I think maybe it's pretty obvious, but it's very helpful to keep track of your past submissions, because those you can't find them anywhere if they're not on Sessionize. So have like a Google Doc or something to keep track. First, because it's very helpful to copy all of the other relevant fields like bio and Twitter and links and everything, and
For sure.
secondly, because some of the talks are like variations of talks that you're already given, so it's helpful to get them. But if it's a new talk, I think that I'm also part of several committees, so I know how it looks from the other side. And as much as you want to look into every submission in a committee, when you get 1,000 submissions, the title is very important, and it should be catchy, like you said, but it shouldn't be vague. So it shouldn't be like the cool things that you can do with something. It should be aimed for the eyes of the committee, and afterwards for the eyes of the audience. So I think it's an art of itself, of the title itself. Um, and
So what is the art?
Do you think the title is equal to the abstract?
So I think just think about yourself as a conference goer. If you have the agenda and you have 4 tracks of this conference, usually the title is everything you see. Like if you have an app or something, you have to click on the title in order to read the abstract, right? And a lot of the times the
Yeah, but
decision
that's
is
the second step. Like as a content committee myself, I think I focus more on the abstract than on the title, and on the experience of the speaker, by the way, which is really like
oh
it's probably
yeah.
the most important thing.
Yeah, but that's not something that you can control when you can build it in a way that will look appealing, but that's not something you can control when you submit to CFP. So again, I agree the abstract is important, but the thing I want to say, a lot of the conferences give you another part of the forum that are speaking points. So it's super important to differentiate abstract from speaking points. Speaking points, that's only for the eyes of the committee, and abstract, that's something that the committee they need to want to have it in the conference, and they need to also think that the audience is going to like this abstract, right? So you're actually writing for 2 audiences, for the committee and the attendees. That's something.
So how do you do it?
So I think for me, I've been to a lot of conferences, and I've been to a lot of committees. So I write something that I would find appealing. If I'm going to, for example, I don't know, a topic about React hooks. So I'm going to write the abstract in a way that's going to explain to people that already know or already heard about hooks why that's something that's going to be new to them, because no one will go to today to talk to say let me explain to you about hooks. So that has to be catchy. And the title, I'm trying to refrain with play on words, let's get hooked or something like that. I really want to respect the intelligence of whoever is reading that, and the title should be informative but eye-catching. I mean, it's a case by case, right?
Do you run your titles by other people to get feedback? Your titles, your
Oh,
abstract?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, abstracts are something that are going to be refined and refined and refined again. Yeah, definitely. Because it's helpful if you know people that like people from committees or people that organize conferences, because they have the best insights on that. But yeah, of course, I run it by people I know, people from the industry. What do you think? Would you go to this talk? What do you think about this abstract? Is it understandable? Is it clear from the abstract that I'm going to speak about ABC? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, one of the talks that I'm giving this year at the conferences that I'll be speaking at had a very different title,
Mhm.
and I couldn't, and it wasn't accepted by a couple of conferences, and then I think I sent it to Tejas, and he suggested like a completely different title for me, and we kind of settled. It was an iteration. I didn't immediately take his suggestion, but we ended up on a very different title than my original title, and apparently it works because
Mhm.
it's gotten accepted into two conferences. So yeah, for sure. The title now, obviously, I can't know why it wasn't accepted before. Usually, you don't get the reason, but I do think the new title is better. I recently, though, had the amusing experience, first time that this has happened to me, that conference kind of censored my title, which is really so. My talk at No TLV is titled "Using Heap
I
Dump."
remember that one. Yeah, we
Yeah,
censored you.
What was?
you're one of the committee there. You were one of the people who
Yes.
edited my.
Yeah, of course you can't. I remember that title now.
So yeah, so the current.
No, please say what was the title, Dan.
No,
It's a
so
good one.
I'll start with the current.
No, please.
No, I'll start with the current one and then I'll tell the original one.
It's a
So
talk about memory dumps, okay?
yeah, it's a talk
That's
about
always.
yeah, it's a talk about heap dumps, memory dumps. So my original title was taking a dump, using heap dumps to find and fix Node.js memory and CPU problems. And you remove the taking a dump part.
Oh, I
Yeah.
forgot about that. I want to give a contradicting perception on this. Um, it happened to me too that I filed CFPs of talks that I haven't given before. But to be honest, I prefer to present the talk in in my local area, so like in meetups, and then the abstract is not like something I need to make up, or the title I need to make up. I kind of like I test run it in my local environment, and then like it also improves, and then I start submitting it. Like I don't really enjoy making up abstracts for. That's what also that's pretty much what makes it hard. And when you present a talk in a meetup, they're not going to be like, oh, your title is not perfect, your abstract is not this, and you can take advantage of this local environment where you can present it, and to really like also define your talk, and understand the value that people get, and the abstract like again would kind of build itself. But it's a
Evolve.
lot harder to write an abstract for a talk that doesn't exist. Like it's a lot harder.
I agree, but I will ask you, do you get feedback from meetups on the quality of your abstract?
What on the It's not about getting feedback on the quality of the abstract, but I feel like what's hard about writing an abstract for a talk that doesn't exist is the fact that it doesn't exist. And when a talk exists and you already know, like what is an abstract about? What is it's about saying, what are you going to talk about? Like, why is it interesting? Why is it valuable? How does it solve a problem? And those you go through this process when you build a talk. And so the moment you have the talk, you already have all the key takeaways
Yeah,
that
but
it's easier
let's
to compose
say
an abstract.
I agree, but let's go back in time. Let's say I was giving a talk 5 years ago about React hooks when they were new. Okay, I think they were new 5 years ago.
Let's talk about something new. Why are we so stuck on
No,
React?
I'm just giving examples. So just something that popped in my head. So I could say like React hooks are the new mechanism for managing state, blah blah blah. Or I can say the all new React hooks are the exciting new way. Like it, I think the way that you phrase things does make a difference, doesn't it?
I don't think so.
You
Not too
don't
Oh,
think
much.
yeah.
so?
Unless you're wordy, unless you're not. But to be honest, they want to see that you know what you're talking about. They want to see that you use the right keywords, and you use the right keywords when you know what you're talking about.
I actually I think it does matter a lot because in most of the conferences, especially international, you don't get a chance to change the abstract. So
Of course,
you don't get a chance to change it. So
I know. Of course, you don't.
so it should appeal, like I said, it should appeal to the audience. It should appeal to the audience to the conference goer who now needs to decide, is now at lunch and needs to decide what talk should I see after lunch, and there are like 4 different talks. So it needs to appeal to them as well. It should the wording matters here, I think.
Evyatar, we skipped you. You've got anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, so just about what Liad said, actually, I think conferences are pretty laid back about changing the abstract. If it's a minor change or if you want to add some information, it's okay. You can make changes both to the title and to the abstract as long as you're not replacing the entire talk. So this part I think is fine. But for me, the process is usually I usually just come up with something and it usually works. Um, like I come up with something, I come up with 2, 3 titles. I pick from them. I write a quick abstract that follows a very basic formula that I have. Like, what is the issue that I'm tackling, or what is the issue that I'm experiencing? Um, what it is that I'm going to present, and what are you going to get out of it? It's going to be usually 1 to 2 sentences for each of these in the formula. And for most cases and most conference talks that I send, that's the formula that works. And the title, I usually experiment with it. So I have 2, 3 titles. I send them to multiple conferences, and I see which one gets accepted first, and then I go on with that one.
Hmm. Interesting. I do have to say that I not only had to change the abstract once, but I actually had to change the entire talk once. So I got accepted to speak at I think it was City JS conference, and then I found that Ryan Carniato was speaking there as well. So we decided to collaborate and run our talks by each other. He was giving a keynote, I was giving a regular talk. So he went first, and he gives me his keynote, and I say, "Oops, there's a problem here." And he goes, "What's the problem?" He said, "Your keynote and my talk are the same."
But
So
isn't that the organizers?
yeah, but look, he kind of his talk kind of evolved, so his title was a bit vague. So I'm not surprised that they didn't figure it out. But I then reached out to the organizer and I told them, "Hey, look, there's a problem here. Ryan's talk and my talk are the same talk. Maybe I should switch a talk because his is a keynote after all." So we ended up doing that. So I gave a different talk than the one that was actually initially accepted, which was funny. Anyway, you hang out in these circles long enough, and funny things happen in various conferences. Anyway,
And just one last thing on
oh
this
yeah,
topic
for sure.
from the content committee seat. You choose people just as much as you choose as you choose their abstract or title. Sometimes depending on the conference. Okay, major conferences, that's true. They get a lot of submissions, and you do want to shine, because you're in a big competition. But for smaller conferences that are like open minded to giving people chances, and sometimes, like I can say that in our conferences in Israel, if we see it, we focus on the person presenting. So if that person has experience, and we like how he stands on the stage, and we like how he creates content, and even if his subject is a bit off or maybe not spot on for the conference, we can approach him to like modify it. But I feel like the most important thing is to like get blood on your hands and like speak, go out, talk on meetups, like start small, but get that experience. It's quite hard to start from a conference without any prior experience on stage, and also it's hard for a committee to accept you when they don't have a lot of videos of your, like, a way to assess your abilities.
Yeah, we can't forget the fact that at the end of the day, conferences very often need to sell tickets and they need to get people excited to register and they need to get sponsorships. And it's just easier to do when you've got well known speakers as part of the conference. If everybody is new and unknown, it's more challenging to get people excited about the conference.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that it's more important to, if you're new, okay, if you're not a known speaker, so it's more important to file a CFP when you already have like some way to give the committee to assess your abilities.
So
You
you
know what I mean?
mean
To start local, do
so you mean start
meetups.
at a meetup and have recordings of those meetups online so
Absolutely,
you can send. The challenge though, for at least for Israeli speakers, is that most meetups would be in Hebrew.
you can speak in
That's
English in a
yeah.
meetup if you choose to.
You can just say, "Is it okay if I speak in English?" Especially if it's recorded.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are people English speaking. It happened to me a few times as I spoke in meetups in Israel in English, and there were English speakers in the crowds, and they were really happy that they did so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
funnily, both NoTLV and React Next wanted me to speak in English, so
I in my first meetup, because I wanted it to be in English. I knew there was someone in the audience who's speaking English. So I said, okay, there's someone who's an English speaker, so I'll do it in English. And she said, no, it's okay, I know Hebrew. And I was like, okay, I'll do it in English anyway. So yeah.
we still have a few questions. We're starting to run out of time. I'll try to pick the interesting one. So we already spoke. I have one about getting accepted in the strategy. I think we already spoke about that, unless you have something special to add about getting into conferences. For me, the only thing I would add is that at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. You just send a lot out there, and you get a lot of rejections. But if you submit to 20 and you get you get accepted into three. That's 1 in 7, but that's still good. And no hard feelings, and keep on going. Any other thing to add to that?
Totally agree.
Yeah, don't be discouraged if it takes time, because it does take time.
Yeah, and the same talk that didn't get accepted into 5 conferences suddenly gets accepted into a conference, and then like I said, you really only need one. It's like getting a date.
It's a
You
numbers
only
game.
It's a numbers game.
where you don't
or
pay on your
or
accommodation and
getting
stuff.
hired into a position. It's always playing the numbers. And my dog is barking. Um, okay, moving on quickly to the next question. Um, how do you prepare the actual talk and slides? Is there a process that you have? And also the structure of your slides. Do you do mostly text, mostly images, mostly live coding? I think Evyatar, you said that you only do live coding. What do you have to say about that?
So I think each one here in this panel has a completely different way of doing each of those. Um, Me specifically, most of my presentations and most of my talks are structured in two. Half of it is a presentation slides, and the slides are very light on text, like 2-3 words per slide. And then I just chat. I don't have anything scripted. If there's jokes. I don't know, whatever comes up when I speak, and that's the first half. I introduce the problem. I introduce the concept that I'm breaking down, and then I go forward, switch to my editor, live code, and everything is pretty much a downhill fall from there. No, it usually works. It usually works most of the times, not always.
I'm
Um,
reminded of this time I long time ago when I attended this. It wasn't really a conference, it was more of a meetup thing, but it was IBM presenting some technologies that they created, and I was working in the enterprise software back then. And they had this thing called WebSphere, and they had this editor called Eclipse, and they were showing some integration or
Worked with
another.
Eclipse.
Yeah, so yeah. Anyway, the guy was showing some wizard that did something, and it was like the wizard that with 100 steps. So he goes, he fills the one thing in the wizard, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next, and after something like 40 minutes, he gets to the final step in the wizard, and the OK button or finish or start or whatever is disabled, and he can't figure out why. So he starts backtracking to see if he missed putting in something. And by the end of the talk, he was back at the beginning of the wizard, and he could never actually figure out like the why he couldn't
Oh
finish the
no.
wizard. Yeah, it was sad, but these things happen. That's why I don't like live coding that much. I've done it. Sometimes it has value. It has a wow value, that's for sure. And the audience is usually on your side, although sometimes it feels like they're rooting for you to fail. It's like watching a person walking on a high wire. But to be honest, I've decided that it's not my style in most cases.
I live for the adrenaline. Um,
Don't we
but
all?
and in
No.
regards, because it was a two-part question. The other part was about preparing for your talk. I think there was a very big discussion a few weeks ago on that WhatsApp group regarding whether we do dry runs or not. I usually do just one before the talk. One time, not before each conference that I give that talk, but once for each presentation. And then before I give a specific presentation, I just run by the slides, see if I remember vaguely everything that I want to do. Live code the thing very quickly just to see that I actually remember still how to code in the era of AI. And that's pretty much it. I go on stage and present a thing.
Ariel, you're writing stuff down. So what do you want to add?
Um, it really depends on the subject. Because I kind of feel like it builds itself. Like the moment I start my research at some point, and I'm trying to explain something to myself. Like for if anybody here hasn't seen any of my talks, my style is mostly finding visualizations to present, visualizing complex processes.
So what? A
Whether it's
picture is a picture is worth a thousand words. That's your style.
yes,
But
yes,
but is it diagrams or is it literally just
diagrams.
pictures?
No, it's all moving. You see the whole flow of what goes where. I think Evyatar, you taught me, I think, how to use a Keynote. You created a monster. Um, so
So
it's really style dependent. I highly appreciate visualizations for my own learning as well. So I try to explain the flow visually, as much as I can. I also recently discovered that I enjoy live coding. So I recently gave a talk, and it was so fun and natural. But it was a subject that I'm very very fluent in. So I'm sure it has a lot to do with that. But yeah, usually what I focus on is finding the most perfect visualization and analogies to present to explain very complicated subjects.
I'm. Are you guys familiar with Tomer Gabel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably should have invited him as well. He's a good friend and great public speaker. His style, for example, is usually having this one big amusing picture and like a word or two or a short sentence on each slide, unless he's showing diagrams. So that's also a style that you can do. It's challenging because you do need to find pictures that actually convey the relevant meaning, and that's not always easy. Might be easier in this day and age of AI generated images, but I'm not so sure.
It sure is easier, and again, it really depends on what kind of talk is it. What are you talking about? Like, I think the reason I find myself with a lot of visualizations is because I choose very, very deep topics, and then like breaking them down is visualization is a very easy way to break down these complex concepts. But if you're talking about like a feature that you did at work or something that like the code is the visualization, or maybe you can even talk about it in human language and people can understand, like there's no right answer. I think it's all very dependent on the context.
How about you, Liad?
So I try to look at my talks when it's possible as like a visual journey. So I'm more like on the side of entertainment. I try to tell a story, which means I'm trying to choose a theme for the story in the visual side, like some sort of a theme, and then have strong visuals that are really compelling. And when I come to build the presentation, so my presentations are a really key part of my talk in my eyes. It's not something that accompanies me. It's the idea. So I'm trying to think of the one takeaway that I want people to take from the entire talk, like the one sentence that people will describe what this talk was about. That also helps me when I'm building the presentation to see that I still stick to that sentence and I didn't diverge. I try to identify the three takeaway points that I can divide my talk to three, like the three stages, especially if it's a technical talk. So you need to start with something light and then dive deeper and then come out with something like in the medium. Um, and I give myself a key of 3 slides per minute, which I know it sounds a lot, but in my style, when I do a lot of animations and a lot of transition between slides, it actually makes sense. It's a good average, 3 slides a minute. And also, I try to allocate 1 hour for every minute of the like 1 hour of building every minute of the presentation.
Oh, wow, that's a
Yeah,
lot.
but yeah, but I mean that's like that's the maximum. But yeah, but I'm trying to build a really visual presentation. So this is my style, and this is what I enjoy building, and I also enjoy being in the audience in those kind of talks.
I have
Can
found
I
that
have I
my
have a
oh,
question,
sorry,
Lian?
go for it.
Can
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you about the takeaways. Aren't they sometimes emergent from the process? Like, do you always predefine, like,
Oh no,
I
no,
because
no.
sometimes I find the message throughout working.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you're right, they're emergent, but I try to keep them to three. So if I take a look back at my presentation and I see, oh, I spoke about like 5 different topics, that's obviously a lot for an audience to digest. So I try to minimize them into like 3 subheaders. Yeah, sometimes I can think of them in advance. They always change. They're always emergent, like you said. But all the time I try to keep it on like one sentence. If someone would go out of this talk and someone ask him what was this talk about, and he'll say this one sentence, I want it to be what I meant for it to be. And
I
just
totally agree that tech talks should preferably have a what's known as a CTA, sort of call to action, kind of like websites should have a certain call to action. That means some speakers can give talks that are just pure entertainment, and maybe then the call to action is have a good time. I'm not there. There needs to be some takeaway out of this. Now, you're absolutely correct, Ariel, that the takeaway can and often does evolve during the talk. But if coming into the talk, I don't have even a vague concept of what I want the audience to take away from the talk, that's a problem. That's an indication that my conception of the topic is premature.
Sense,
Also,
yeah.
I have found, by the way, that my presentation style tends to change and vary. Sometimes I mix it up just for fun. Sometimes the topic demands a certain style of presentation rather than another.
you have an
Uh,
example?
Yeah, sometimes I'm more like I said. I go I have done a couple of live coding talks because sometimes I intentionally want to show that a certain process is really easy to implement or straightforward to implement. That's usually when I will do a live coding session, because if it's complicated, there's not going to be enough time, or I'm going to rush through it. If there's too much code on the screen, uh, by the way, my number one tip for anybody creating a presentation is make your font as big as possible and then make it bigger, and and then make it even bigger. And if that means having less text on the slide, good. Have less text on the slide. Have as little text on the slide as possible. That would
I
be my
like to make to say for about that about like as little text as possible. What I like to do is I like to write down the messages that I want to think. Like the deepest thing I want when I say a sentence and I want the audience to remember the sentence as I said it, I write it down.
the worst thing you can do is have a lot of text on the screen, because then what ends up is the audience reads the text rather than listen to you, and it becomes a show and tell, or a document rather than a presentation. By the
They
way,
don't enjoy it.
one of the problems that I have with live coding is that in many cases the un, un, unless you can really distill the issue down, you might end up with too much code on the screen at once, and that's a challenge.
Not to
Um,
mention that your IDE is full of a lot of other things that are not the code. So these are also distracting.
yeah, there are presentation modes in modern IDEs, but still, you're correct. Um,
I would even say that when you have a lot of text, not only that the audience isn't listening to you because they're reading, you're actually this. It's a cognitive. You're hurting them cognitively because they're suffering because somebody is speaking to them while they are
And
reading
then
something. Like
and then you have two bad choices. You're either reading exactly what the text is, and that way you're wasting their time because you're reading slower than they can read, or you're trying to summarize what the text means, and then, like Ariel said, it's like two conflicting streams of
the only
data.
time that I might have text, like in the sort that I might kind of read text off the slide, is when I'm reading out a definition of a thing. If it's
or a
really
quote.
important for, or a quote, if it's really, you're absolutely correct. If it's really important for me to read a quote and it needs to be a short quote, or a definition, and again, it needs to be a short definition, and I'll literally sit, and in the case of definitions, I'll literally agonize over each word trying to remove it. And only that's the only case, and usually there might be like one or maybe two slides like that, and that's it. The rest might need to be bullets that I expand on. They're not intended to be read as such. They're more as a reminder to me and to the audience after I said something, rather than the actual
But
text of what I'm saying.
by the way, a small tip if you do have a sentence on the screen is to highlight one or two words that are the essence of this sentence, and then everyone in the audience can just attach to these words and understand it
Yeah,
better.
just don't underline them, because then everybody will think they're links.
Yeah, they try to click in the air.
Yeah. Um, okay, let's see. Like we have, I think we're almost out of time, but so do you have, so one kind of final question, um, or I'll mix two questions together and you decide which one you want to answer. So one question is, we kind of touched on that on the dry runs, is that how do you prepare for delivering a talk? And the second question, the final question, would be uh, about the entertainment versus informative, or specifically, do you put jokes in your talk? So let's start with the first one. How do you prepare? Do you, Evyatar, you mentioned that you do one dry run for a talk, or at least whenever you significantly change a talk or introduce
Mhm.
a new talk. How about Liad, Ariel? Do you also do dry runs, or not at all, or multiple dry runs? How do you go about it?
You want to
It's
go first, Lian?
I can. I think it's critical to do dry run, and if only for the sake of just to see that you're on time, or at least
Exactly.
less than the time that you're given, because that's something that's really hard to estimate when you're walking on a talk. You can feel like you're on time, but you always, first of all, on stage you always speak slower than you think you're gonna speak. Like it takes more time. And if you have 90 slides, there's no way to estimate how long they're going to take. So,
Sometimes it's the reverse, though. I remember speaking at a conference. I was after some speaker, so I was lazing out in the speaker's room and looking at the clock. Say, okay, I still have 20 minutes, and she finished. Like she finished a 30 minutes talk in 10 minutes.
oh
So
wow,
the
Oh no.
the host runs up to me and says, "Come on, come down, come down." And it
a
was
dry
fine.
run could have solved it.
Yeah, dry run could have solved it. But I totally agree. I actually literally did a dry run of a talk today, of a new talk that I'm giving at the conference, and I did it precisely because I wanted to make sure that it actually fits into the allotted time. And I was like 2 minutes too long, something like that, on a 20 something minute talk. So you know, I need to adjust it a little bit. But and the other point was that during this dry run, I realized after when I got the feedback, it's important to get feedback from the people who give the dry run to. Otherwise, what's the point? And I realized that one of the things that I was trying to get across was not sufficiently clear, and I need to change one of my examples because of that. So I know how I'm going to change it based on the feedback that I got from that dry run. But I do that one dry run, not multiple dry run. And I will want to add one more thing, and that's my own personal tip, as it were, for people listening to us. I never try to memorize an entire talk. It just doesn't work. But I do write down and try to memorize my first 2 or 3 sentences, because that way I can get up and running. I don't have to worry about coming on stage and go like, I'm stuck. I don't know what to say. I know what my first 2 or 3 sentences are going to be. I memorize those. Sometimes I kind of even riff on those, but I still at least know what I'm going to say. And from that point on, it flows. Ariel, what about you?
I'm a nerd. I do a lot of dry runs, a lot. I try to get as much feedback as I can, because I really try to take advanced topics, but to make them accessible. So even for let's say less experienced developers, and I want to talk about something deep. So I try to also collect feedback from a variety of levels of developers, and that way, like when I do so many dry runs, I also like I collect feedback and I make sure I also feel like my talk is so complete by the time I finish with this like hard work process, and I also know that it's adaptable for I know which levels it's adaptable for, and I never have to worry about time. I never have to worry about remembering. You can wake me up at 3 a.m. and I remember it because I've did it like 5 times before I got on
Don't
stage.
don't you sometimes feel like you're overdoing it, like too much of a good thing, as it were? Like
Um, I can.
overdoing
I
it?
like to like do collect the feedback together. So like I would invite like 4 or 5 friends and like do a dry run for like a few friends together, like I did with Liad and I did with Evyatar. So
I'm
like
not your friend.
it. You're very welcome to. I'm building a new talk, so you and Liad can come. All of three of you. Evyatar, you haven't heard this one as well. So I like to like collect a few people and then do it, but honestly, no. I feel like the hard work pays off. Um, it obviously does pay off.
It has this advantage, like doing a lot of dry runs, that when you get to the stage, you feel like you did all the hard work. Like Ariel said, it's like now the fun part begin, because you've run this stock, you did the hard part of running it, fixing it, running it, fixing it, and now you just have to have like go on stage and have fun, which is, I think it's a great feeling.
So I
Dry
think
runs
it's
are like tests. That's what I'll call it. Dry runs are tests.
so
It's
to me
like
it's kind
having a lot
of
of tests.
so
Who
to me it's
likes
kind of
tests?
different because I think that it's anchored in in my conversational style of my talks. I think that every time I give the same talk, it's a completely different talk. Like it has the same bullet points maybe, but I give the different jokes. I say different things, different sentences. I come with sometimes even different takeaway because my talks are mostly conversational. So dry running it again and again takes away from the conversational style because I don't want to memorize my points. I don't want to be accurate about what I say. I just want to, I don't know, talk about what I feel like talking about today. And this works for me, specifically in the style of talks that I usually give.
The
One
first
of the
half of the talk as well.
Yes, yes. So that's why I have just one sentence on the screen, and I don't know, and it's like for me, it's like a prompt.
You riff
What do
out
I
of it.
think about this one today?
Yeah.
So this is the way I prepare for my talks, just by not preparing much, just seeing that I have the overall understanding of time, and that I can deliver it on time, that I know what I should do about my live coding, and if everything is all right, then yeah, I
Uh,
just go with it.
what
I would just add though that this really changes with experience.
Mhm.
When you're an experienced speaker, it's much easier to just get up and talk about the topic. And when you're a new speaker, like anything, practice makes perfect. You're never perfect, at least we aren't, but undoubtedly practice makes a significant difference.
One point about timing, because that's the reason, one of the reasons you do dry run, even if you don't memorize everything. I also don't like to memorize everything. You have to have anchors in the presentation, in the talk, that you know, okay, after 10 minutes I should have gotten to this point, and if
Yep.
I didn't, then it means that I'm behind time or ahead of time. So that's, you have to have anchors in the
Hmm,
presentation.
interesting. I usually don't. I look at
Yeah, me
the talk
neither.
holistically. I don't try to find anchor points in the talk.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, last comment. Anything about jokes? Yes or no? Entertainment
Oh,
versus content?
I would say that I mean there should be a wow moment in the talk, like preferably two. I'm very much on the side of entertainment, but if not, there should be a moment. I mean, the most fun part is when people like take out the cameras, like the mobile cameras, and just taking pictures of the slide, or writing things down. So those are things that should be, even if it's a fully informative talk, I think. And
It's not always possible, though, I think. Sometimes talks are just informative. I not I mean, I know your talks. Like you did this talk about putting 3D objects in the real world, like the AR talk. That's a very wow talk. The entire talk was a wow moment. People kept taking pictures. But, if I'm talking about a certain technical topic that's really like you kind of refer to it in the zeitgeist, and it's important and interesting and informative, but there is no wow. Maybe I can stick an amusing thing into the slideshow. Maybe I can't. What do I do about it?
there's always a wow, even if it's a technological wow, even if it's like a wow.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be maybe a wow,
Needs to be an
but
aha.
Aha.
or
Eureka
yeah,
moment.
but it's not really the question. Like you kind of asked about jokes, which I think are crucial, because when people laugh, they listen to you. That creates engagement. Like jokes are actually necessary for engagement.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's also if you can find a funny slide, that makes life even easier in that regard. So, for example, in a particular talk that I gave a while back about web performance, I wanted to make a point that correlation and causation are not the same thing. So I found this amusing graph that shows a correlation between the usage of Internet Explorer and murder rate in the USA, and showed that as one decreased, so did the other. And that was an amusing side to put, and it saved me the trouble of coming up with an actual joke. The important thing is you need to be amusing, but it's important to. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a stand-up comic, so don't try to have it all jokes. Don't try to be too funny, unless you do happen to be a comedian. I know some tech speakers who are. I'm not.
I think at least for me, I think jokes are like an integral part of my talk, but I never know what the jokes are going to be because they're not like I don't do knock knock jokes in my talks. I don't prepare the funny parts in advance. I just it's part of the conversational style of the talks that I just come up with stuff as I go, depending on what the previous sentence was, and usually that's how it works for me. Um, Talks end up with laughs, and they do end up being funny usually, even when it's a dry talk about I don't know CSS. Um, but nothing
CSS
that
is
I know to
funny.
plan in a what.
CSS is funny.
CSS is funny in a way. Yeah,
It
CSS
was
is the
really
joke.
funny.
But nothing that I plan in advance, but I end up actually being even complimented on the humor in the talk that wasn't even planned to begin with. So that's the way I do it. I just talk and find out the funny thing, or sometimes even after I say it, I realize it was funny.
Hmm. Before anything to add before we finish, before we wrap up?
Uh, I have something.
Yeah, please do.
So the one thing, and this is an important tip for everybody speaking, because going on stage is super scary and it's frightening, and there's a lot going on, and it's easy to get a blackout. And when you do say something you don't intend to, or when you forget what you're going to say, it's easy to spiral down and just crash and have the entire talk or the entire rest of your talk just go to waste. And the one tip I found for good recoverability is realizing that the audience doesn't really know what you're going to say. They don't know the continuation of the talk. And just pause for a second, recollect, and continue with the next topic or whatever it is. And even if you made a mistake, you can either say, "Oh, that was incorrect," and fix it. It's okay. They will understand, or just skip ahead, go forward. It's fine. They don't know even what they missed.
Yeah,
Uh, uh,
go for it, Liad.
yeah, I totally agree, and I would also say that it's important to remember that you and the audience, you have the same goal. But I mean, the audience came to be entertained or to be taught or to be. They don't come to grill you. Both of you want you to succeed to be able to give this talk. So it's easier if you think about it like that. It's easier if you think about it. Oh, they're gonna have so much fun. They're gonna enjoy it.
I totally agree with what you said. So the final thing before I let you all go, two things actually. One is to give your contact information if people want to get in touch with you, talk to you about possible speaking engagements or ideas or whatever. And also, if you can name one of your favorite conferences, one or two, that throughout the years for whatever reason. Or alternatively, your least favorite conference for whatever reason. So, who wants to go first?
I will not rank them because that's not a nice thing to do. But I will say I will nominate one that was noteworthy, and this is one that Ariel and I went to last year in Hamburg, and Liad went there as a conference goer, as an audience.
It's
And
my plus
we
one, please.
Yes, Ariel's plus one. And we went to Code Talks in Hamburg, and that was fine. It was a really good conference, good party. I heard. I didn't go to the party. I had to fly to the other conference on the same night. But alongside that conference, there was a huge furry convention. So 3,000 engineers, 5,000 fairies. You cannot make this up. You cannot make this up. It was brilliant. Um,
They were laughing. I was scared.
Why? You weren't wearing a
That's the
fur
reason.
costume.
That's why it was
That's
scary.
why I was scared.
Okay.
I can say that if someone who's listening is in the front end or JavaScript or React Summit and JS Nation, those are two conferences that are very speaker friendly, and they give really good experience. They're back to back, like one day React Summit and afterwards JS Nation. They cover
And it's
everything,
Amsterdam. That's
and
also great.
it's Amsterdam, and they have the best speakers. Like they have new speakers, but also the best speakers from JavaScript community. So I truly recommend to always trying to submit to them.
Yeah, the only downside with JS Nation is that you until fairly late in the process, you don't know whether you'll be invited to speak in person or online, which is a bummer. You submit, you get accepted, and then 2 weeks before the conference, they tell you, yeah, but it's going to be online. Well, 2 weeks probably. I don't think it was that.
Yeah, it's not 2 weeks.
Not 2 weeks, but a month or two before the conference, they tell you it's going to be online rather than in person, which is a bit of a bummer.
Okay.
And how about you, Ariel?
So I'm gonna speak next month in Web Expo in Prague. I haven't been to the conference yet, but just so far from the organization, I have to say that I'm in awe. Also on the
Which conference did you say?
attention to
Sorry.
small Web Expo
Web
in
Expo.
Prague. I'm gonna speak. It's my first time attending to Web Expo conference, but the organizers have had like one-on-ones with each and every one of the speakers. They grouped the speakers to do dry runs and feedback to each other's. You have like 2 full days of fun just for the speakers before the conference. Like they have like children activity in the conference, so people that have kids can like come and enjoy it the full day. Like they really give such attention. They give attention to every small detail. I've yet to see such an organization that goes down to these levels. So I'm very excited to see how would Web Expo feel like. I will let you guys know next month.
I really, speaking about conferences I really like the various JS conferences. I spoke at a couple and they were always very well organized and also very top-notch speakers. And the people who are running it were very attentive to detail and very friendly. Um, Also, I'll give two. Another one is unfortunately on hiatus. I think it was Front End Zurich, which was also very well organized, very friendly, and gave a stipend to every speaker, which was unexpected. They say, "Hey, now take this money," which was really nice of them to do. And I'll also this a conference which is no longer active. I mentioned O'Reilly Fluent, so I was actually supposed at one Riley Fluent, I gave a workshop. So, you think, hey, I'm going to give a workshop. How many people will participate in a workshop? 10 people? 20 people? Can you guess how many people were in my workshop?
Oh no. Oh no.
How many?
40? 50? 100.
Over 200
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
in a workshop.
In a workshop?
Oh,
That
In a
doesn't make any
workshop.
sense.
Yeah.
And you
Giving a
didn't bring
workshop to
enough swag
200
for
and
everyone.
something people. That was interesting. Anyway.
Oh no. Sounds so bad.
I actually worked out in the end, but they were lucky because my workshop was structured in such a way that the whole concept was people opening the Chrome Dev Tools and writing things into the console. So that's something I could do to a large group of people. If it had been something like do this and that in VS Code and Git and I don't know what, that would never have flown.
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked. I walked into this huge auditorium and there were like a huge number of people. This is a workshop. Anyway, yeah, it was really weird. Anyway, thank you. So you forgot to give your contact information.
Mhm.
how do people reach out and contact you, except Ariel, for some reason, doesn't want to be contacted?
You can contact me through Liad. Just tweet, write Liad on Twitter.
I'm Ariel's agent.
You're on LinkedIn, though, right?
I have LinkedIn.
Yeah.
For now.
So for me, obviously, you can always DM on Twitter. It's Liad Yosef on Twitter and LinkedIn. And please feel free to ask questions, give comments, anything. I'm open.
How about you, Evyatar?
Yeah, I'm not very active on Twitter. You can always find me there, but I'm not very active. It's Evyatar Al, Evyataral. And the rest of my contact details are on my website, ealush.com. So ealush.com. Most of it is there, I think.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for participating. I think this was really interesting and, more importantly, informative, like we like our conference talks to be. So thank you all, and thank you to our audience for listening in, and that's it. Bye.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for inviting.
Bye-bye.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
guys.
Bye-bye.